that for Kobe Bryant. Come on. And now I have the pleasure of bringing one of the leading lights in journalism here, with all due respect to you, Ryan. We love you, but we're so proud of this young lady, beautiful young woman who we have on television here in Chicago. Can't wait to see you nationally, girl. Tia Ewing, everybody. Put your hands together. Fox 32, come on.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. So I think it's safe to say that Kobe Bryant's legacy is still living on and will live on forever. And so joining me on the panel, esteemed journalists from right here in Chicago, we'll start to my very far left. We have Reverend Todd Yeary. We have Ryan Baker from CBS 2. We have former sports writer with the Chicago Sun-Times, Clyde Travis. And we have Kelly Shannon from Maven Entertainment. So come tomorrow, it will be a week that Kobe Bryant saw his tragic death. I mean, just unfortunate. His daughter as well as other people that were on that helicopter. But one thing I think that's very clear now, since Kobe Bryant's death, he was known to be a family man, a husband, a girl dad. That's going viral right now. A philanthropist, and also a basketball player. What do you think makes Kobe Bryant resonate with all of us? Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. What do you think it is?
I mean, I think this is truly the global impact of Kobe's death and the 8 others on that helicopter. The global impact has been phenomenal. I think for so many that grew up watching Kobe, his commitment to excellence. Of course, in Chicago, we idolize and revere Michael Jordan, and there aren't many who are in that conversation, but Kobe is right there. I think Kobe's commitment to excellence, and I heard Bishop T.D. Jakes say the other day that Kobe's flaws added to our affection. In America, we love people who are human enough to be flawed, but hero enough to overcome them, and to many, Kobe was a superhero.
Anyone else want to take that question?
I just want to piggyback what Ryan said, because that's exactly where I was going. The human frailties, you know, overcoming obstacles. And what I think really resonated with most of us is how he morphed into a different person, how he took the pitfalls that he may have had in his life and just flipped it. I mean, he was a ego. I first saw Kobe in '95. And he was an ego-driven, self-absorbed individual who took that to another level. And as time progressed, he overcame 2 early obstacles. One with Shaq, where everybody was almost anti-Kobe. The next was the alleged sexual assault situation, where you just didn't know what's on this young man's mind. But that never stopped him. And then the things that he began to do as he morphed into this great person off the court, where many people did not even know about. And that kind of set the tone. Our heroes quite often demonstrate at various times human frailties. And we hate to see that, because we look at them as superhuman. But when an individual who has human frailties comes back and just becomes a bigger superhero and almost powerless, and I think that's what happened. Honestly, that was the first time I ever thought outside of the box, and I said, Kobe's gonna get out of this. I mean, that was unrealistic, but he has such a powerful aura about him that you just couldn't believe it was happening.
Reverend, maybe you can speak to this from a religious standpoint. I've heard people that don't believe in God at all. People that I would say are pretty much atheists say, now I feel like I need to draw closer to God. I'm going to hug my family. I'm going to speak to that brother or sister that I haven't spoken to in a while. What do you think about this death? Because we've had other celebrities die tragically. What do you think it is about Kobe's death that has people now in that state of mind?
The suddenness of Kobe's death at 41 years old, along with a number of others on that aircraft who are all invested in the future, helps to remind us that while we may plan for tomorrow, tomorrow may never come. And so we've had to wrestle with this notion that every moment matters. We have to frame for our congregations that we don't have time to waste. We can't make any more excuses. We've got to do the best we can with what we have today, just in case today might be our last day. And so as we frame Kobe's influence and impact, when we look at the resume beyond the court, that's the other thing. A lot of us know him for basketball, but he was bigger than basketball. He left basketball when he could have played a few more years, but because he wanted to be present in the lives of his children and his family, to be able to focus on the advancement of women's athletics, to go into investments in terms of investment capital. There was more to Kobe than I think we ever knew. And so we grew up with him, 17 years old to 41. We spent a quarter century being connected to this sports icon. And because he's an extension of us, we grieve deeply all around the world. Yeah, he's a member of our family.
He's a family member.
And so, yeah, that's what we say. Every moment matters. I remember where I was. I saw the TMZ hit come up on my phone, and it was just so outlandish that I skipped through it again and waited a few minutes before I checked. And everybody that I was around on last Sunday was stunned, and still stunned, right? But last night, I think, helps us to understand when faith is part of it, to the atheist question. That's why Amazing Grace was the right song to start with last night. Grace is what gives us life and hope and possibility.
Amen.
I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the media. We have some media representatives on the stage right now. And, you know, when that TMZ tweet came out, a lot of people questioned it. A lot of people questioned, was it true? Everyone said, is this true? And then the media went on to carry on the story citing TMZ. There was an individual who was on one of the channels who actually said that all of Kobe Bryant's family members died on that plane. That was incorrect. They had to retract that statement. From a media perspective, let's talk about a little bit about the role that you play when there's big stories like that, and not always the race to be first, to be human before being first as a journalist.
Well, Ryan can attest to this also, you know, doing what he does. It's almost, that's the way you're driven. We are a get the story first driven individual, but we also are really, it's important to have the facts. But as social media has impacted the way we look at things and just how fast information can be disseminated, you know, there may be a rush to judgment. And in this particular case, you're talking about one of the biggest stories probably in our lifetime, in our generation, how it impacted everyone. So you understand the impetus in terms of trying to get the story, but the tragic way it was gone about and the hurt and pain that it was exhibited from that situation, you know, goes without saying.
No, I think Clyde hit it on the head. I think this social media, instantaneous news cycle we live in, and the thing about it, when it's Kobe, I mean, it's only a handful of uber celebrities that you can't believe it, you don't want to believe it, you want to be objective, but as a basketball fan, as someone who covered Kobe during his entire 20-year career, I had the good fortune of having some personal moments with Kobe, to get to know him on a personal level. I remember one of the last times he was at the United Center, him taking a picture with my wife and daughter and talking about what it's like to raise daughters and giving me advice about that. I'll never forget that, and just how passionate he was. And that girl dad hashtag, it resonated with so many people. I have two wonderful daughters, and I can't even imagine those final seconds when he's with Gianna. I'm sure telling her it was going to be okay, trying to protect her, but knowing that he could not with the 7 other victims. So that's heart-wrenching. That's something that it's hard to wrap your head around. So I wanted to honor Kobe, wears this Mamba shirt, the black, we knew him as Kobe, the Black Mamba, but he was a black man, he was a black father. And here on Black History Month, starting today, these are Kobe Bryant shoes, special Black History Month. So we want to honor Kobe Bean Bryant and his memory and legacy, because that will live on forever, regardless of the story.
Mr. Shannon?
Yeah, I actually want to introduce another element into this story, and that is the current state of our country. We are extremely divided right now, especially from just yesterday, right? And I look back at 2016 and the impact of social media. We know there's a lot of misinformation out there. So when I first saw the tweet, I got a tweet from a very close friend of mine that he had passed. I hesitated for, probably about 20 seconds because I didn't want to believe that that was true. And the way the country is right now, we tend to believe things that we want to believe and tend to deny things that we don't want to believe. And I didn't want that tweet to be true. But as more tweets came in, I realized it was true. And just the realization, it was surreal. It was a heavy moment. And I look at, again, I step back and look at the country, and we're so divided now. We need more things to unify us, to bring us together. And exactly. These are the types of moments when we have heroes in our life. I heard a term that Reverend Jackson used, playing above the rim. Kobe played above the rim. And when we have heroes like that, that leave us, that brings us together.
I want to say that on next Thursday, the 13th, we're honoring Kobe. Shaquille O'Neal is our host, along with Isaiah Thomas and Dave Bing, Hall of Famers, Dougie Fresh, Judge Mathis. It's going to be a big night at Soldier. Call today. Tickets are $500 and $200 for that event. It's sustaining our work the rest of the year, and so I want to express my thanks. Give a big hand to Shaq. Let me make it how we live as if life is certain and death is uncertain. Death is certain, life is uncertain. And when a baby dies, we regret it. Pain is temporary compared because the child has never tasted life and a baby died. An older person dies, they say, well, they had their time. But when somebody dies at high noon, when the sun is eclipsed, and there's disorientation. But the thing that struck me the most, Becca, is that people, when Aretha died, they said, well, we know she could sing. What else did she do? She worked with Dr. King, she kept going, we know, what else did he do? And that's one of the last lessons for these athletes who are playing above the rim. What do you do besides make your money? At the end of the day, people will not as interested in his basketball as they were in his children, his family. So the song that says, only what you do for Christ will last, only what you do to help those whose backs against the wall really matters in the end, Reverend Todd Yeary.
That's the exclamation point on why this is so tragic. We tend to put professional athletes, particularly black male professional athletes, in a very narrow box, as if the only thing they can do is dribble, catch the ball, throw the ball, whatever the case may be. But remember now, Kobe Bryant's resume included an Academy Award.
That's right. An Oscar winner.
Let's think about that for a minute. He not only won trophies for his basketball prowess, but also for his creativity. Being in venture capital, starting a venture capital fund with one of his partners, investing in the next generation. I think Kobe helps us to understand that to whom much is given, much is required. But at the end of the day, we all end up in a posture where we want the song May the Works I've Done Speak for Me. Kobe's works, I think, will be his lasting tribute, and he has set a high bar, not only for athletes, but for the rest of us, to be committed to our families, invested in the next generation, and putting the best of who we are on the table, on the line every single day.
I mean, Kobe was 41, but he probably lived 10 lifetimes in what he was able to accomplish from the beginning to the end. And that's really the takeaway of life is not promised tomorrow, but what you do with the time you have, and how he reinvented himself on more than one occasion and was so, I mean, we've seen so many images this week of Kobe and Gigi, and he was present with her. And that has to be inspiring, and sending that message to fathers everywhere with all of, not just Gianna, but all of his children. And our prayers go out to Vanessa. And as she said, I mean, she's got to live minute by minute. You lose your husband, a father, and this big, ginormous figure, and then you have to move on. So there's going to be some dark day, and your daughter, and do that, and all of the victims. We don't want to overshadow that tremendous loss, because 9 people in all lost their lives.
What do you think, you know, oftentimes when people pass on like this, the media is on it for a week, the media is on it for 2 weeks, and then it just goes away, it fades away. How do you think we keep Kobe Bryant's legacy alive in all of us?
I think we have so much invested of ourselves into Kobe. Ryan and I were talking earlier, and we go back to 95, you know, before he got drafted. And I remember a good friend of mine, John Lucas, talking to him about this guy, Kobe Bryant. And my first reaction is, I could care less. We got a guy named Ronnie Fields up here that Kobe don't want any part of. And that conversation, just to watch the 2 careers, you know, very unfortunate situation that happened to Ronnie Fields, who was arguably the second best player in that draft. There was Kobe Bryant, Ronnie Fields, Mike Bibby, Jermaine O'Neal, and Tim Thomas.
Can you also, Kobe's father was a basketball player.
Without question.
Children become almost with their parents. His mother's an educated woman. That's why he can speak Spanish and Italian fluently. Kobe came out 18 years old, going on 50. He came out mature.
Well versed.
Well, our households have a lot to do with who we are, and don't leave his parents. He didn't just happen to be a good man. He was around the best all his life.
And he worked, though. Yeah. But on top of that's absolutely true. I mean, he was set up to succeed, but on top of all of his God-given gifts and abilities, he worked. Nobody outworked him, and that was his signature and what he was known for. And actually, as you hit on it, Clyde, earlier, alienated a lot of his teammates. Like, who is this guy, this 17-year-old kid saying, I'm going to be the best ever, and putting in the work to back it up. He didn't just show up on the court. He was great because he worked at it.
And then,
Right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
He was not 5'6".
That's true.
He was like his dad. And my point is that the attempt to dismiss his father and mother, as if Kobe started over here. Now, Kobe started from ground up. And Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonds, McCall the role. These Ken Griffin and his son. And so it is that parental background matters.
One of the things that Kobe's clips this week, he talked about how as a kid, when his father was playing basketball at 3 years old, he played the game with his dad from the house. He began to imitate and mimic what he saw, and that actually influenced his parenting, because he said kids don't do necessarily what you say, they do what you show. And so he tried to model his investment. I think the girl dad thing that's hitting everybody is we don't celebrate, first of all, black fatherhood enough, and we don't celebrate the bonds between black fathers and their daughters. And so Kobe, I think, has reignited a value conversation about how black men are loyal to their families, and we don't do enough celebrating of that.
That's it, preacher. That is it. That's it.
If I could add another point, the same way that Joe Bryant focused on Kobe Bryant and Kobe Bryant focused on Gianni, I know everybody in here is familiar with Lion King. That's the circle of life. And that's exactly why Rainbow Push focuses on the kids. And if I could bring it back, so in 2 weeks when we have this benefit program, the programs that is benefiting are the kids programs, Cool Kids Code program, the robotics program. It's the circle of life. So this is how we bring the focus back around. We've got to invest in the young kids. I love to see them out here in the crowd.
A lot of these parties going on, but the one to be at February the 13th, Shaquille O'Neal and Isaiah Thomas and Dave Bing and Dougie Fresh and Judge Mathis. I may even sing myself. Yeah, I'm a rap. I can conceive, believe, achieve it.
Okay. Any final words as it pertains to Kobe Bryant?
Well, if I can go, I just want to say I've heard some discussion about the Mamba mentality, and I think that needs to be clarified. That Mamba mentality is something that sustained him. And it's not just for athletes that he's so clearly defined. The Mamba mentality is open, never give up your dream. Work hard. If you're going to do something, do it right. And many of us heard that all our lives. But there's also a segment that has never heard that. And it's so easy to give up when things don't go your way. And because this larger-than-life person emphasized the fact and more or less coined the phrase of just almost a dogmatic personality, never give up, never stop, never take a shortcut, and keep on keeping on.
To follow up on Reverend, I think it's so fitting that the NBA All-Star festivities are going to be here in Chicago, which is going to be a celebration of Kobe. David Stern, the commissioner, just passed, and it's all going to be here in Chicago. First time since 1988 when Michael Jordan clowned real good, and it's a connection from Michael to Kobe here in Chicago. So I know we're going to do it right, Santita, right?
Well, let me say again, on the 13th, you can get more information this week downstairs before the day is over. The 13th, we're going to honor Kobe, and Shaq will be our host. Don't miss it. Let me give our panelists a big hand, would you please?
One last thing, Reverend, that I think we ought to carry with us is that the tragic loss of Kobe Bryant and the other adults who were dream keepers, there were adults on that plane invested in the next generation. What we have to remember from this week is we may not all live a long life, but we can all live a full life. And so if we put the best of who we are on the table today, the world will be a better place in the event that we don't wake up tomorrow.